It was a chilly evening in the heart of the city, and the kind of night when people wanted warmth, laughter, and a good meal to forget the world outside. Inside a fancy restaurant, candles flickered on polished tables, silverware sparkled, and soft jazz music filled the air. The place was alive with conversations, business meetings, dates, and family dinners. Among the waitstaff moving quietly between tables was a young woman in a neat red uniform and a white apron. Her hair was tied back, and though she looked tired, there was kindness in her eyes. She had a quiet grace about her, the kind that people noticed without realizing why. She wasn't from a rich family, and she worked long hours every day, often skipping breaks so she could earn a little extra, yet no one ever saw her complain. She always had a smile, always said thank you and have a great evening even when her feet ached. At one corner of the restaurant, sitting alone at a table near the window, was a man dressed simply, though everything about him whispered wealth. His watch gleamed, his posture was calm, and his eyes observed more than they revealed. Most of the staff didn't recognize him, but if they had looked closely, they might have noticed the face that sometimes appeared on the covers of business magazines. He was one of the city's quiet billionaires, the kind who didn't crave attention, but watched people carefully. He believed you could tell more about a person by how they treated others than by what they said about themselves. That night he had come not just for dinner, but for a little peace of mind. His company had been going through a rough time, and he wanted to escape the noise of meetings and numbers. As he waited for his meal, the waitress approached his table with a calm smile. "Good evening, sir. Would you like to see the dessert menu after your main course?" He nodded, impressed by how genuine her tone sounded. "No forced cheer, just quiet kindness." "Yes, thank you," he said softly. Then, it happened. The door of the restaurant burst open. A loud crash echoed as a masked man stormed in, his hand trembling, pointing something metallic toward the counter. Gasps filled the air. Someone screamed. Dishes clattered to the floor. The man shouted, his voice sharp and full of panic. "Nobody move!" In an instant, the room froze. Chairs scraped. A child started crying. The music stopped mid-song. Every eye turned toward the masked figure, who looked desperate more than dangerous. The billionaire's hand tightened on his napkin. He had seen many things in his life. Business collapses, betrayals, even near-death experiences. But this was different. This was raw fear in real time, and yet among all the chaos, one person stood out: the waitress. While everyone ducked or backed away, she didn't scream or run. Her heart pounded, of course, she was human, but her face stayed calm. She took a slow breath and looked around, checking if anyone was hurt. Then, in a steady voice that surprised even the billionaire, she said, "Please, sir, let's not hurt anyone. You can take what you need. Just stay calm." Her tone wasn't harsh, but it carried quiet authority. The masked man's hand shook. "I said don't move!" He shouted again. She didn't argue. She just nodded gently, keeping her eyes on him. Not with anger, but with a strange kind of empathy. Everyone in the restaurant was watching her now. The billionaire leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her every move. The waitress slowly reached for a small tray behind her. "I'll give you the money from the register," she said softly. "No one here will stop you. But please don't scare the customers." The robber hesitated. Her calmness confused him. In his world, people either screamed or fought back. No one talked to him like this, like a person, not a threat. Minutes felt like hours. The air was heavy. The billionaire could hear his own heartbeat. Finally, the man nodded, still shaking. "Fine, just hurry." The waitress turned to the cashier and motioned for her to open the register. The other employees obeyed, terrified. The robber grabbed the cash and ran out as quickly as he came. Silence. Then, the sound of people breathing again, of someone sobbing in relief, of glasses clinking faintly. The waitress didn't collapse or cry. She just exhaled slowly and started checking on everyone. "Is anyone hurt?" she asked, moving from table to table. The billionaire watched her closely. There was no trace of pride in her face, no sense of heroism, only genuine concern. That moment and that calmness in chaos stayed with him. He didn't know it yet, but what he had witnessed would change both of their lives in ways neither could imagine. And as she helped a frightened child find her mother, the billionaire whispered to himself, "She's different." He didn't know why, but something deep inside told him, He needed to find out more about her. The restaurant was silent long after the masked man had run away. The soft clinking of broken glass was the only sound that dared to fill the space. People were still frozen in their seats, unsure if it was really over. The waitress, the same young woman who had faced the robber with calm eyes, slowly looked around. "Everyone's safe," she said gently, her voice steady but soft. "It's okay now." A few people nodded. Others just sat there, still in shock. The child who had cried earlier now clung tightly to her mother, who kept whispering, "It's all right, sweetheart." The billionaire sat quietly, watching her. There was something about her calmness that didn't fit the chaos they'd just experienced. She didn't act like someone who wanted to be a hero. She acted like someone who cared, even for a stranger pointing a weapon at her. When the police arrived, questions filled the air. Witnesses spoke over each other, but she stayed patient, explaining everything clearly, how the man had looked nervous, how she'd just tried to keep him from hurting anyone. One officer said, "You were brave. Not everyone would handle it that way." She smiled faintly. "I wasn't brave. I was just scared like everyone else, but someone had to stay calm." The billionaire's lips curved slightly. He admired honesty more than anything. After giving their statements, people began to leave. The manager thanked everyone for staying calm and promised the restaurant would reopen soon. But the billionaire didn't move. He waited, pretending to check his phone, watching as the waitress quietly helped her co-workers clean up the mess. A broken vase, spilled water, shattered glass. She didn't flinch. Her movements were slow, careful, almost graceful. Finally, when most people had gone, he walked toward her. "Excuse me," he said. She turned, a little startled, then smiled politely. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. We'll be closing for the night, but I can get someone to bring you your bill." He shook his head. "No, that's not what I came for." He paused for a moment, studying her face. "I just wanted to say, you handled that better than most people I've ever met." Her smile was modest. "Thank you, sir. I just did what I thought was right." "That's rare," he replied quietly. She gave a small shrug. "Maybe, but people are scared these days. You can't fight fear with more fear." The billionaire nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "You're right," he said. "That's wisdom most people don't learn even after a lifetime." There was a small silence between them. Not awkward, just thoughtful. Then she said, "I'm glad everyone's safe. That's all that matters." He could see the sincerity in her eyes. No trace of pride, no desire for attention, just relief. Before leaving, he asked gently, "Do you mind if I ask your name?" She hesitated, then told him. It was a simple name, ordinary maybe, but to him it now carried something special. "Thank you," he said. "I'm sure I'll see you again." She smiled, probably thinking he was just being polite. "Have a good night, sir." He stepped out into the cold night air, but his mind wasn't on the weather. The image of her calm face wouldn't leave him. All his life he had built empires, led thousands of people, and made decisions worth millions of dollars. But that night, watching a young waitress stand steady while fear gripped everyone else, that moved him more deeply than any success story ever had. As his car pulled up, his driver opened the door, but he didn't get in right away. He just stood there, staring back at the restaurant's warm light through the glass windows. He whispered to himself, "There's something about her. Something real." That night he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking, what kind of person reacts like that under pressure? What kind of life teaches someone to stay calm when everyone else panics? The next morning, instead of heading straight to his office, he asked his assistant to find out more about the restaurant. "Just the basics," he said. "The staff, the owner, anything you can find." The assistant was puzzled. "Of course, sir. Is there a reason?" He smiled faintly. "Let's just say, I met someone interesting." Later that day, he found himself sitting in his office, staring out of the window overlooking the city skyline. The world below seemed busy, noisy, full of people rushing for success. But he kept thinking of that quiet waitress, the one who didn't run or scream, who showed more strength than most executives he knew. He thought of how many people worked hard every day, unseen and unappreciated. Just like her, people who carried the world quietly on their shoulders without asking for applause. He made a decision right then. He didn't know exactly what he would do yet. But he knew one thing: he wanted to help her. Not out of pity, but out of respect, somehow. He wanted to change her life. the way she had changed his view of courage in just a few minutes. As the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the city in shades of gold and gray, he whispered again, "Some people don't need riches to be rich inside," and he smiled. He had no idea that his next move, the one inspired by that quiet courage, would not only surprise her but would soon touch millions of hearts across the world. The morning after the robbery, the city carried on as usual. People rushed to work, horns blared, and newspapers talked about markets and weather. But for one man, the billionaire who had witnessed the night before, the world didn't feel quite the same. He sat in his office, surrounded by glass walls, tall buildings, and silence that cost millions. Yet his mind wasn't on business meetings or profit charts. It was still at that restaurant, replaying every second of what he saw, the look in her eyes, the way she spoke to the robber like he was still human, the quiet strength behind her trembling hands. He called his assistant again. "Did you find anything about that restaurant?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. "It's a family-owned place. They've been running it for about 15 years. The waitress you mentioned, she's been working there for 3 years, full-time." He leaned back, thoughtful. "Anything else?" The assistant hesitated. "She lives in the older part of town, about 40 minutes from here. Small apartment. No records of higher education, but she volunteers at a local shelter on weekends." That caught his attention. "A shelter?" "Yes, sir. A place that helps people who've lost their homes or jobs. She's listed as a volunteer coordinator. Seems like she's there almost every Sunday." The billionaire stayed silent for a moment. A faint smile formed on his face. "Interesting. Thank you." After the call, he stared out at the skyline. To most people, she was just a waitress. But to him, she was something more. Someone who understood strength differently. He made a quiet decision. The next day, he visited the restaurant again. It was calmer now. The glass had been replaced, the floor cleaned, and the scent of fresh coffee filled the air. Yet the staff seemed more subdued, as if still shaken by what happened. He sat at the same table by the window. When she noticed him, her eyes widened slightly in surprise. "Oh, you're back," she said, smiling politely. "I hope everything's better tonight." "It is," he said warmly. "I thought I'd check how everyone's doing." She nodded. "We're fine." A little nervous, maybe, but it could have been worse. He could tell she was being humble. Most people would still be talking about their bravery. She didn't even mention it. As she poured his coffee, he said quietly, "You really handled yourself well. I've seen leaders break under less pressure." She looked at him curiously. "You talk like you've seen a lot of pressure yourself." He chuckled softly. "You could say that. I work in business. It can get intense," she smiled. "I'm sure it does. But pressure is part of life, isn't it? We all face it, just in different ways." He nodded slowly. "That's true. But not everyone faces it like you did." She shrugged lightly, her tone modest. "When you've been through enough, you learn not to panic. It never helps." Her words carried quiet weight. He noticed how her eyes drifted for a moment, not out of pride but out of memory. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't want to intrude. So instead he asked gently, "You volunteer, don't you? At a shelter?" She looked surprised. "Yeah, how did you know?" He smiled. "A little bird told me." She laughed softly. "Well, yes. It's something I do on weekends. It helps me feel useful. Sometimes people just need someone to listen." He watched her carefully. "That's rare. People who give without expecting anything back." She looked down, her voice soft. "I used to need help once. Someone gave me a chance when I had nothing. I promised myself I'd do the same for others." There it was in the truth behind her calm. Not luck, not bravery born in comfort, but courage shaped by hardship. The billionaire felt something shift inside him. All his wealth, his achievements, his success, they suddenly felt smaller. He said quietly, "You know, people like you make this world better without even realizing it." She gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. "I just try to do my part. I'm not special." But to him she was. After finishing his coffee, he stood up. "Thank you," he said. "Not for the service, but for reminding me what real strength looks like." She blinked, surprised by his words. "You're welcome, I guess." He smiled, paid his bill generously, and left. But his mind was already turning with ideas. That night, He couldn't shake the thought of her. Someone who worked long hours, helped strangers, and stayed calm when others panicked. Not because she wanted praise, but because that was who she was. He realized he wanted to do something meaningful. Not just for her, but for people like her. So he began making calls, quietly. He reached out to his charity foundation and asked about local community programs. "Find out how we can support workers like her," he said. "The ones who hold everything together but are always overlooked." His assistant hesitated. "Should we make it public, sir?" He shook his head. "No, not yet. This isn't about headlines. It's about people." As the night deepened, he looked at the photo on his desk, one of his first stores from decades ago. Back then, he'd started with nothing but determination and a little luck. Maybe that's why he felt connected to her. He understood what it meant to fight quietly, to carry burdens others didn't see. He smiled to himself. Let's see where this leads. Little did he know, his next step would change both their lives, not through money, but through something far more powerful: gratitude and humanity. The following week passed quietly for the waitress. Life went back to its usual rhythm: long shifts, smiling through tiredness, and returning home late to her small apartment. The city outside her window never slept, but her world remained the same: work, rest, repeat. She didn't know that someone was thinking about her every single day, someone planning something extraordinary behind the scenes. The billionaire had made a decision, not out of guilt, not out of pity, but because what he saw that night had reminded him of the kind of person he used to be before success changed his life. He didn't want to save her. He wanted to honor her, quietly, respectfully, without taking away her dignity. He spent several evenings talking to his foundation team. "I want to create something that helps people like her," he said. "Those who work hard, who show courage when the world isn't watching." His assistant looked intrigued. "You mean, like a scholarship?" "Not just that," he replied thoughtfully. "Something broader. A fund that supports low-income workers, single parents, waiters, janitors, caregivers, anyone who keeps society moving quietly." He paused, remembering her calm face during the robbery. "It'll be named after something simple, something that feels human." After a moment, he smiled. "Let's call it the Everyday Hero Initiative." His team got to work immediately. Within days, the project was drafted: a fund to provide financial assistance, skill training, and emergency support for people who worked in service industries. But the billionaire wasn't done yet. He wanted to make sure she benefited from it, not because she was the reason for it, but because she represented the kind of strength it stood for. Still, he didn't want her to know it came from him. He believed the truest acts of kindness were the ones done in silence, so, one morning, while the waitress was refilling coffee for customers, her manager approached her with an envelope in hand. "You've got mail," he said, sounding as puzzled as she looked. "Mail? Here?" she asked, drying her hands. "Who would send me something here?" He shrugged. "No idea. But it looks official." She wiped her hands on her apron and opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly folded letter with a logo she didn't recognize: the Everyday Hero Initiative. Her eyes scanned the paper carefully. It read, "Dear recipient, you have been selected as one of the first individuals recognized for your courage and compassion under pressure. As part of our new community outreach program, we are pleased to award you a financial grant to support your continued personal growth and well-being. This is not a prize. It is a token of appreciation for the quiet strength you show every day. Thank you for inspiring others without even knowing it. The Everyday Hero Initiative." At the bottom was a note: "You are seen, you are valued." She read it twice, her hands trembling slightly. "This must be a mistake," she said softly. "I don't even know what this is." Her manager smiled faintly. "Maybe someone saw what happened last week and wanted to thank you." She blinked back tears. "But I was just doing what anyone would do." "Maybe," he said. "But not everyone did." That night when she went home, she sat by her small kitchen table with the letter in her hands. The grant wasn't enormous, and just enough to cover some bills, repair her old car, maybe even save a little. But to her, it felt like a blessing sent from nowhere. She didn't know that, somewhere across the city, the billionaire was reading a report from his assistant. "It's done," the assistant said. "She received the grant today." He nodded. "Good, don't contact her. Let her think it came from the program." The assistant smiled. "You really believe in staying anonymous, huh?" He looked out the window, watching the city lights twinkle like stars. "If people knew it came from me, they'd see money. I want her to see meaning." He paused before adding quietly, "Sometimes the most powerful thank you is the one that doesn't need words." Days turned into weeks. The waitress used part of the grant to fix her car so she could volunteer more often at the shelter. She also helped a co-worker who was struggling to pay rent, slipping some cash into her locker anonymously. The billionaire's assistant showed him the updates with a smile. "She's helping others with the money you gave her." The billionaire smiled softly. "Of course she is. That's who she is." But he wasn't done yet. He began visiting the restaurant more often, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for dinner. Not to impress her, but to understand her world better. He noticed how she always remembered regular customers' names, how she comforted an elderly man who came in alone every week, and how she gave free dessert to a family celebrating a birthday when she knew they couldn't afford much. The more he saw, the more he realized this wasn't about one heroic moment. This was about who she was every single day. One evening, as he paid his bill, she smiled and said, "You've been coming here a lot lately." "You must really like the food," he smiled back. "I like the people more," she laughed softly. "That's rare to hear." "Maybe," he said. "But some people remind you what matters most." She didn't understand what he meant, not yet. But soon, his next move would reveal everything, not to shock her, but to show her that even the quietest courage can echo louder than the richest man's voice. Weeks passed, and life carried on as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The restaurant buzzed with chatter. The smell of coffee filled the air, and people came and went, unaware that a quiet miracle had already taken place in the life of one woman among them. The waitress continued her daily routine, working hard, smiling through exhaustion, and helping others whenever she could. Yet deep inside, something had changed. She didn't know who sent that mysterious letter or why she had been chosen, but she carried it like a small flame in her heart, proof that someone, somewhere, had noticed her. That tiny spark of hope made her days lighter. She started saving money, thinking maybe, just maybe, she could go back to school one day, or open a small cafe of her own. Nothing fancy, just a warm place where people could feel safe and welcome. Meanwhile, the billionaire watched from a distance. He continued visiting the restaurant, always sitting at the same corner table, always ordering the same black coffee. He never made his presence feel grand, never flaunted who he was. To her, he was just another regular customer, polite, quiet, and kind. But he noticed everything, the way she smiled at elderly customers, the way she helped a struggling coworker without saying a word, the way she paused between tasks just to comfort someone who looked upset. It fascinated him, how much good one person could do with so little. One evening, as the restaurant began to close, he stayed behind a little longer. The soft lights reflected off the window, and outside the rain tapped gently against the glass. She walked over with her usual smile. "You've been coming here quite a lot lately. Do you work nearby?" He smiled faintly. "Sort of. My office isn't far, but I like this place. It feels human." She laughed softly. "That's not something people say about restaurants often." He looked at her thoughtfully. "It's not the restaurant. It's the people who make it feel that way." Her cheeks warmed a little. "Well, we try our best." There was a short pause, a comfortable silence between two people who, unknowingly, had already started to change each other's lives. "Finally," he said quietly, "do you ever think about doing something else? Something bigger?" She tilted her head. "Bigger?" "Yes," he said. "You have a calm strength most people don't. Ever think of leading something, maybe your own business?" She laughed gently. "That sounds nice, but dreams like that cost money. And well," she looked down, smiling sadly. "Some dreams stay dreams," he nodded slowly. "Maybe, but sometimes life surprises us." Before she could ask what he meant, a coworker called her name, and she excused herself with a quick smile. That night, as he left, he made another decision, one that would reveal his identity in a way she never expected. He called his foundation team the next morning. "We're expanding the Everyday Hero initiative," he said. "I want a special feature, A mentorship program. We'll pick people with natural leadership qualities and give them a chance to start something of their own. His assistant looked curious. And who's the first candidate? He smiled. I already have someone in mind. The following week, the waitress received another envelope, similar to the first one. She opened it with cautious excitement. Dear participant, based on your community impact and leadership potential, we are pleased to invite you to join our new mentorship program for aspiring business owners. You have been nominated by someone who believes in your courage and dedication. This program includes financial support, professional training, and guidance to help you build a better future. The Everyday Hero Initiative. She stared at the letter, speechless. Nominated by who? She whispered. Her coworkers gathered around in excitement. Wow, that's amazing. Maybe it's your manager? But the manager shook his head, equally surprised. Not me. But whoever it is, and they must think very highly of you. Her heart raced. She thought of the robbery, of how strangers had thanked her afterward, and of the quiet man who kept coming back to her restaurant. That evening, as she refilled his cup, she smiled and said lightly, You wouldn't happen to know anything about the Everyday Hero Initiative, would you? He looked up from his cup, expression calm. I might have heard of it, he said with a faint smile. She squinted at him playfully. You sound like someone who knows more than they're saying, he chuckled softly. Maybe I just believe in good people getting what they deserve, she smiled, shaking her head. Well, whoever's behind it, I wish I could thank them. He looked at her, his gaze soft and thoughtful. You already have. She didn't understand what he meant, but something in his tone made her pause. There was warmth there, genuine, quiet, and deep. Later that night, when the restaurant closed, he left an envelope under his cup before walking out. Inside was a short note written in clean, elegant handwriting. Keep believing in yourself. The world needs more people like you. She found it after clearing his table. Her eyes filled with tears. She looked out the window. But he was already gone. For the first time in years, she whispered a prayer, not asking for help, but giving thanks for the kindness she didn't understand yet. She didn't know it, but the truth was slowly coming closer, and when it finally arrived, it would touch her heart in a way she could never forget. Days turned into weeks, and the waitress's life slowly began to change. The mentorship program she'd joined through the Everyday Hero Initiative gave her new confidence. She attended workshops, met kind people who believed in her, and for the first time in years she started to dream again. Not just small dreams, but real, possible ones. Every night she wrote ideas in a small notebook. A cafe with warm lights, free coffee refills for the homeless, maybe books on every table. It sounded simple, but to her it meant hope. And every few days, that quiet man, the billionaire, still came by for his usual coffee. They talked more now, not about money or success, but about life, about how people were forgetting to be kind, how courage sometimes looked quiet, and how the smallest good deeds could heal a tired heart. One evening, as the city lights shimmered beyond the window, he asked her, If you had the chance to change your life and just one big chance, what would you do? She smiled, a little embarrassed. I'd open a cafe, not a big one, just a place where people could come and feel safe, like they belong, even for a few minutes. He nodded slowly, as if he already knew that answer. That night, when he returned to his office, he made a phone call that would set everything in motion. Make the arrangements, he told his assistant. Find a small property near her neighborhood, something cozy, something she'd love. The assistant hesitated. And what name should we put on it, sir? He thought for a moment and smiled. Not mine. Put it under the Everyday Hero Initiative. Let her think it's part of the program. A few weeks later, the waitress received a letter that nearly made her drop to her knees. Dear participant, based on your performance, you've been selected for a special grant, full funding and mentorship to start your own cafe. This opportunity is given to individuals who represent courage, kindness, and community spirit. A location has already been arranged and all necessary support will be provided. Congratulations, you've earned this. She sat there in disbelief. Tears filled her eyes as she read the letter over and over. She whispered, How could this be real? That night, when the billionaire walked in for his usual coffee, she approached him, her eyes still red from crying. You won't believe what happened, she said, her voice trembling with joy. The program, they chose me. They're helping me open my own cafe. He smiled softly, pretending to be surprised. That's wonderful. You deserve it. I can't even explain what this means to me, she said. It's like someone out there saw me. Really saw me. He nodded gently. Sometimes life rewards those who keep doing good even when no one's watching. She laughed, wiping her tears. I don't even know how to thank them. Maybe, he said with a kind smile. You don't have to. Maybe your cafe will be your way of saying thank you to the world. Months passed and the cafe opened quietly one bright morning. The sign above the door read Haven. Inside, the smell of coffee and freshly baked bread filled the air. There were warm lights, old books stacked neatly on shelves, and a small sign near the counter that read, For those who feel lost, and you're welcome here. Customers came, smiled, and left with lighter hearts. She treated everyone with the same kindness she'd always shown, from a tired delivery driver to a lonely old woman who just wanted someone to talk to. And every week, without fail, a familiar man came in and sat at his usual corner table by the window. He never said much, just smiled, watched, and ordered his coffee. Black, no sugar. One day after closing time, she noticed an envelope on that same table. Her name was written on it in the same clean handwriting she remembered from before. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a single note. Your calm changed everything. You showed the world that real courage doesn't shout. It whispers kindness. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters. The man at the window. She pressed the paper to her chest, tears falling freely now. She finally understood. All this time, it had been him. The quiet customer. The one who had seen her. Not just as a waitress, but as a human being with strength that didn't need recognition. She whispered into the empty cafe, You didn't have to do all this, and smiled through her tears. But thank you. News of her cafe spread quickly. People called it the place built on kindness. Local journalists covered her story. Waitress who stayed calm during robbery now inspires thousands. When reporters asked her what she would say to the man who changed her life, she smiled and said simply, He taught me that even the smallest act of goodness can ripple across the world. You never know who's watching, or how deeply your courage can touch someone's heart. That night, the billionaire watched the news quietly from his office. When he saw her smile on screen, his eyes softened. He turned off the TV, looked out over the city lights, and whispered, The world needs more people like her. Then, with a small smile, he added, And maybe fewer people like me who take too long to notice them. He picked up his cup of coffee, took a slow sip, and whispered, She didn't just change her life, she changed mine too. And somewhere in that quiet cafe called Haven, 2 lives, one built on wealth and one built on courage, had finally found peace through kindness.